habits need not be something that you center around one thing. It's a conscious decision that you take on a daily life based on your value system. So why do you think a lot of these people are not able to consciously build their habits?
Any action or thought that is repeated at a set frequency, it can be conscious or subconscious. Very often we only think about actions as habits. Tying your shoelaces, brushing your teeth, going for a morning jog, action. But what you don't realize is that our thoughts are also habits. And unless we learn how to break these mental habits, we get stuck in these mental loops. Our habits are as inherited genetically as our genes are. So you'll notice that what your grandparents did, your parents did. What your parents do, you do. There's a very cute quote that says, diabetes doesn't run in your family. Nobody runs in your family, which is why you have diabetes. Most of your life is actually created by these subconscious habits. So now let's start living consciously by choosing the right habits. And then the beauty is that those conscious habits again become subconscious habits in the future.
So first of all, Ashdin, welcome to the Discovery of an Author podcast. It is truly an honor to have you with us. And as I told you, me and my entire team, we were completely stoked and pumped up when we came to know that we'll be interviewing you. So thank you for taking our time.
My pleasure. Thank you so much for having me.
Great. Ashdin, I'm going to start with the first question directly. What made you write this book? So you have written this book, you have written a lot of books, but a recent book is One Habit a Day. What made you write this book? What pushed you to write this book? Why did you feel that you need to write this book in today's day and age?
So it's interesting that this book came out post-COVID. And at that point of time, across the months that we were in lockdown and at the time we were in COVID, one of the biggest changes that I saw taking place in the world was this mental health revolution. People were yearning for things that they could do for their mental well-being. So when Westland approached saying that, we want to convert your podcast into a book, what should we be talking about? Because my podcast talks about so many different topics. We talk about productivity, relationships, money, etc., etc. I said, you know what? Our first book has to be about mental well-being, but not in the standard way in which we think mental well-being as a therapist talking. It has to be in an accessible way that people understand, where does actual happiness lie? Where does our mental emotions lie? And what are little habits that we can do around it? Raghav, as a habit coach, I have a very different definition from what habits are. Very often people talk about habits and you'll see habit ka definition on most dictionaries. Mine is different. Mine is any action or thought that is repeated at a set frequency. It can be conscious or subconscious. Very often we only think about actions as habits. Tying your shoelaces, brushing your teeth, going for a morning jog, action. But what you don't realize is that our thoughts are also habits. The way in which we think are habits. You wake up in the morning and the first thing that you say to yourself is, oh my God, life sucks. Next morning you wake up and say, life sucks. Life is horrible. Third day you wake up and say, oh my God, same thing, life sucks. What's going to happen is that your life is going to suck. It's the habit that is repeating over and over and over again. And unless we learn how to break these mental habits, we get stuck in these mental loops. And I'm sure you know so many people who are stuck in that same mindset, either sadness or in that constant state of anxiety, constant state of fear. So we talk about how do you actually understand these different emotions, these mental states, and actually do something about it. So the reason for this book was coming out of COVID. We saw a lot of people needing something like this, which is why we made it for them.
Ajin, do you really feel that this was COVID just acted as a catalyst to bring out these emotions and feelings in people? You think that this trend of not being able to understand or manage or handle their daily lives was something that people were always struggling with, and COVID just added as a catalyst when people were bound and restricted in their own houses, and that is when they realized that their world, how it used to be, is not like that anymore. So do you think COVID acted? What happened differently in COVID according to you that actually catalyzed this entire vertical of wellness and habit creation?
So there were two, three things that took place. The first one is the intense sense of vulnerability that people felt. That, oh my God, in a night, my entire life can be turned upside down. Everything that I thought I held dear, everything that I thought my life was heading in a particular way can be completely thrown for a toss. So that was that first realization. Second was being trapped at home in a constant state of fear with the kind of content that was coming out, which was fear mongering at the time, because that was what was selling. So you realize that it was just fear on top of fear. You obviously also never spend that much time with your family, unfortunately. And you had to suddenly upgrade to this digital world. So it was such a new aspect of living. But finally, the thing that really, I think, hit the nail in was the number of people creating content around mental well being. So as soon as you realize that YouTube exploded, Instagram exploded, podcasts exploded. In fact, so many people told me, Ashton, aren't you scared? So many podcasts are starting. People will stop listening to the habit coach. And I was like, no, no, no. Listen, we need more people listening to podcasts. I'm very happy if the category expands because I know how hard it is to maintain a podcast. You know how hard it is to maintain a podcast. Lots of people start them and then they stop them.
Yeah.
So, so you realize that it was this burst of content creation also that started creating this awareness. Because there was one side that was raising fear, and there was this other side that was saying, "Arey, if you're feeling this fear, this is what you can do about it." So I think it was this perfect soup of these three things that happened at the same time that led to the feelings of mental well-being, awareness of mental well-being increasing.
If habit is something which is an instrument and a tool and something that can really help an individual streamline his and her life, why we see in today's day and age that a lot of people who have certain habits are centering their habits around their professional life. So the only habit that I see in majority of people is centered around their professional life. For example, if I have to join my office at 10 a.m. and I have to come back by 6 p.m., then everything is centered around that. I wake up at 8. I get ready by 9:30. I have my breakfast by 10 so that I can leave XYZ. So in my mind, when even I was working in a company, all my habits were centered around my professional job and career. That means all my habits were centered around the idea of getting money. And that is what majority of the people do. But what I understood from your book is that habits need not be something that you center around one thing. It's a conscious decision that you take on a daily life based on your value system. So, why do you think a lot of these people are not able to consciously build their habits and just create habits around a mechanical ecosystem?
The question. First time I'm getting asked this question, by the way. So full marks to you.
Thank you.
Okay, so the first thing is that the reason why our lives are centered around work is because of the way that we equate success and work. See, all of us as human beings have something that we think of as success. Is my life successful or not? And the parameter that we use to create success is either money because it is numerical and you can track it, or it is designatory in level. So you can say, okay, I'm part of a hierarchy, I'm growing. But as soon as you realize that these are artificial measures of success, you start realizing after a while that I don't need these. We keep saying family is the most important thing, family is the most important thing, but how much time do we actually spend with the family? And when we were forced to spend time with the family, what happened to us? We started pulling our hair out. So you realize that you need to have a different parameter of success if you want a different way of living. Now, your parameter of success or your intention is where the entire focus of your life goes. I'll give you a very simple example. I don't know if you're old enough to remember this, but when I was growing up, we didn't have a TV at home at that time. TVs were very new. The entire living room was designed so that one chair and one sofa faced each other. It was designed for conversations. Now look at our living rooms. Our entire living rooms are focused at a TV.
Yeah.
That means that the TV is the center of attention. This TV is the focus. The TV is where our entire intention lies. Entertainment, escapism. And you realize that these are parts of our life now. So, coming back to your question, if work is the most important thing and we spend far more time at work than we spend at our home or with our family, we spend as much time sleeping as we spend at work. So, you realize that work is a key part of our life. Now, if work is a key part of our life, fantastic. Everything has to center around it. And that is where we see our growth. In fact, whenever you talk to somebody and say, "Hi, my name is Ashdin Doctor," and the first question is, "What do you do?" Or tell me about yourself. The first thing that the person will tell you is what they work, where they work, what their designation is, if how many people they are reporting to them, or whatever it is. Right? Very rarely do people say, "Oh, I love skiing," or "I love making cocktails," or the key part is where do your intentions lie. And that comes back to habits. So your question was broken up into two parts. So the second part is about intention setting. You know, in fact, my first TEDx talk was on this. It was on understanding that our habits are as inherited genetically as our genes are. So you'll notice that what your grandparents did, your parents did. What your parents do, you do. There's a very cute quote that says, diabetes doesn't run in your family. Nobody runs in your family, which is why you have diabetes. So you realize that the habit of running is so important that but you never saw anybody running. You saw people coming home from work and sitting on the sofa, which is why you thought that was the way to be. So you realize that most of your life is actually created by these subconscious habits. Most of your life is created by seeing habits that your parents did, which is why you upnaud them, by seeing habits that your friends did, which is why you upnaud them. So we've subconsciously upnaud habits. My entire role in life is to make people realize that, look, these habits are subconscious. Now let's move from making subconscious habits to conscious habits, which is why my definition had conscious and subconscious as habits. Let's create conscious habits. Let's become aware, saying that you look at your life sometimes and wonder, like, why did I get here? How did I get here? The answer is you've been living subconsciously. So now let's start living consciously by choosing the right habits. And then the beauty is that those conscious habits again become subconscious habits in the future. So this is the way in which we take people through. So you move from subconscious living to conscious living and back to subconscious. And that I think is a beautiful journey that people go on.
So that means does not matter how your environment, your geography, your financial condition, your family background is. There are certain unconscious habits that you will take from that, ecosystem, but you always have the power and the conscious decision making to change it into something different. And when you do that, you can disassociate yourself from something that is holding you back. You can then, so Ashdin, that means इफ आई फील कि अरे यार मैं गुस्सा करता हूं क्योंकि मेरे बाबा को गुस्सा आता था, मेरे पापा को गुस्सा आता था, सो दैट जस्टिफिकेशन इज नॉट ग्राउंडेड इन लॉजिक. ठीक है, आई हैव सीन दिस थिंग हैपनिंग बट आई कैन डिसाइड टू नॉट गेट एंग्री. I can work upon it to not get angry. So that means I am not bound by my biology, right? I am not bound by my genetics. If I want to put in the effort, I can create a completely different version, a better version from my own father or from my own grandfather, and then people can see that. So is that the power of habit, that it does not make you a slave of your biology?
Correct. In fact, I'll say one joke, which is that most people often say, "Oh, I'm Aries, that is why I get angry very fast." So we keep saying, stop blaming your horoscope and some poor stars in the sky for behaving like a, you know, angry young man or whichever way you want to think about it. I was going to use another word, but I thought I'd make a PG choice for this podcast. So stop blaming all these things. As soon as you realize that you can make a change yourself, you will start making that change. So that's the first thing. The more important thing, na Raghav, is that it starts with a word called intention. You know, my entire first book, which was called Change Your Habits, Change Your Life, was focused on this one thought that people use motivation to try and make a difference in their life. And motivation sucks. Motivation is the worst thing that you can do to try and make a change in your life because motivation is like a matchstick. The example I give in the book is that it's a matchstick. You light a matchstick and it burns very brightly for a few minutes, for a few seconds, forget minutes, for a few seconds. You cannot cook your Maggie noodles on a matchstick. You need to light something that burns for a longer period of time. And what burns for a longer period of time is your intention. Why do you want to make this change? Why do you actually want to do this instead of subconsciously living it? And when you create an intention, even if you sometimes fall off the wagon, make a mistake in a habit, you come back to it much more quickly because your intention is very strong.
That is beautiful and that is sustainable. That
That
is
is,
something that is not. So it's like habits and intention building is like playing a test match rather than a T20. You need
Mm.
endurance, you need consistency, you need to stick. You need to not get tempted by a very, breeze of a ball and take a long shot and get caught because you have to stick for a couple of days' time. You cannot play the game of life on a T20 format. You need to have endurance. So I think this is what discipline and having great habits do to you. They build endurance.
Raghav, I'm going to steal this example from you, okay? This is
Please
a
do that.
beautiful example because people keep saying, Ashdin, tell me about the 21-day rule of habit change. Is it true that do habits really change in 21 days? And I look at them and say, Gadera, you want to make this habit for the rest of your life? No. Why are you in such a hurry to
बिल्कुल
do it in 21 days?
नहीं.
If you do it in 21 days, what happens? On the 22nd day, you think, Chalo, I have made this habit, boss. I don't have to worry about it anymore. On 23rd day, it's gone. So you
Absolutely.
realize that you have to think about this habit change for the rest of your life.
Yeah.
Don't be in a hurry to try and get it and make it a habit. Habits
Absolutely.
actually are part of you, almost like your hair or your arms are part of you.
Yeah. This is, I'll tell you one reason why, we were talking about the habit of reading. Why do you know why it has declined? Why people don't read? Because our education system was created in a way that once you have taken your degree by 12th, khatam. भाई पढ़ाई हो गई because you got
Burn the
certified, burn
books.
the books. So
Hmm.
you like now there is no need for me to upgrade whatever I had to accumulate in form of academics. I have done it. I am not touching a book, and that's the reason why people do not continue the habit of reading anything. And that is why it stops because you have validated it कि 12वीं कर लिया आपने ये CBSE का सर्टिफिकेट मिल गया वो done and you're like I'm never going back to it.
Raghav, that was me. I
That was me
hated
also.
reading. Huh. So once it was forced upon me, after the exams were over, I said, Baba, I don't have to read again. And I didn't read probably for another 10 years. Till I started my own division within my company. And then I said, oh my God, I need to learn how to run a business.
Yeah.
So where do I learn how to run a business? Back in the day, we didn't have ChatGPT, so we used to
Yeah.
pick up books. So then I started realizing that in a book, the power of a book is that you take somebody's life learnings and condense it down to 3 weeks of your reading or 2 weeks of your reading, or however fast or slow you read. And that was the power. Imagine somebody's life's learnings in such a short period of time. My God, that ROI is so impressive.
Ashdin, we'll come to the book part of it. Lot of amazing habits you have talked about, but there are certain habits which I personally it touched me because I still struggle with those habits, and I think if it can resonate and somebody could relate to it, let's talk about it. Ashdin, what is judgment? I want you to first define judgment. And why do you think it creates all kind of problems in our lives? मतलब मेरे को तो लगता था judgment is a skill. कि राघव पता है मेरे को क्या है मैं किसी बंदे को देखता हूं ना मैं यूं पता कर लेता हूं एंड आई यूज्ड टू थिंक दैट्स अ सिद्धि वी वर कंडीशन इन अ वे दैट दिस इज समथिंग ऑफ अ सुपर पावर आई नो दैट इट इज नॉट समथिंग सो आई नीड यू टू फर्स्ट डिफाइन जजमेंट क्या होता है और क्यों why is it problematic and why we need to cultivate a habit of not judging people.
Idea of this chapter comes from the fact that many a times we are victims of this constant judgment. This is right, this is wrong. You should do this, you should not do this. Good boys are like this, good girls are like this. Very often, judgment is used as a tool to manipulate you into action. So when you were talking about judgment as a siddhi, you were talking about it saying that with my vast experience, I can look and say, file through all my experience and say, this person is probably like this. This is where the whole concept of stereotypes come from. If this person is, well dressed and like this, then he must be thinking like this. If this person is shabbily dressed and like this must be like this. The point is that very often when we judge people, we are putting our perceptions on them. But do we really know the truth? When we judge, we close ourselves to learning more because I know everything. And the question is really, do you know everything? So I keep talking in our market research days, my family business is market research. We used to joke and say that never think that you know what the person is going to say because only God knows everything. For everything else, we need market research. We need to ask the right questions. So what we have to do is before judgment, we have to put aside that initial knee-jerk reaction that we have on, if this person is shouting means this person is like this. And actually see the actual thing that is happening. The truth is very often different from our perception of the truth. And our judgment is nothing but a perception of the truth. Now, you've read enough to know that we basically understand the world through our senses. And our senses can be tricked, which is why you see so many illusions. Our senses can be tricked. Now imagine in the same way, our perception of this event that is taking place, what are the chances that it's being tricked? So the entire perception of the idea of this book, the chapter, was two parts. One is to understand the judgment part that you really don't know everything. So open your mind and open your eyes to receiving it. But it also goes into a bigger context. The difference between criticism and uh, critiquing. You know, um, you can have something called constructive criticism and you can have critiquing. Very often, when you're criticizing somebody, you're criticizing the person. It becomes a personal attack. Why you're so lazy you don't read books? Personal attack. Who said I was lazy that I don't read books? That is where judgment came in. I turned an action that you did into an identity of yours. That is when communication breaks down, when love is lost. That's when actually hurt starts creating. Always remember that you criticize or critique the action. Reading more will make you uh, more aware of what's happening in the world around you. Fantastic. That's an action. Don't critique the person saying that you're a buddhu because you don't read. So the idea of this chapter on judgment was these two parts. One part, which is the first part, saying you really don't know the truth, so why you're judging people? Instead, spend time actually finding out about the person instead of just passing your judgment. And the second part was this aspect of critiquing and criticism. And people constantly critique. We can talk about film critics, and we say, he can't make a film, so that's why he's critiquing it. That's exactly the point. So, how do we be as open as possible to receiving? Because I think when we are open, the quality of our life increases dramatically.
So, are there a couple of things that I, as an individual, can be more mindful of when I know that I'm in a habit of judging people? Mindful steps that I can take, which I can then practice as a process. कि हाँ यार मेरे को तो ये खत्म करना है अपने अंदर से क्या दो तीन चीजें मैं रोज थोड़ा अमल करूंगा उस पे या whatever. What can we do for that?
So, in fact, very much like your fate system, the first question you ask yourself is there any proof of this?
Yeah.
Okay, so the evidence, dikhao. Where is the proof? So, I am coming up with this judgment. Where is the proof that this judgment is correct?
Beautiful.
So, that is the first question you ask yourself. The second one is that what am I missing here? Do I really know everything? Do I really know the truth? And that itself is such a disarming question that it breaks down. Raghav, this is a beautiful process to follow even when you are having a fight with your spouse. Your girlfriend comes angrily and says, I saw you looking at that girl. Why do you do that? And is sulking. What is your first reaction? Are you a jealous girl? My God, I can't believe she can't even let me be. What is the other reaction? Oh, I was not looking at that girl. till you go back and ask yourself these questions. Is there any truth to this? Yes, there was truth. I was looking. Okay, all right, fantastic. Let me ask the second question. Do I know the complete truth here about what it was that was happening? So then I go and ask, saying, why did it trouble you that I was looking at her? And the answer you might get is very strange. She might tell you something that you would have never thought about, saying that because I saw you looking at her, other people also saw you looking at her. That means, what are they thinking about me? And you'll be like, Arey, I never wanted to make you feel bad about yourself in that way. So you suddenly realize that the judgment that you initially passed, jealous girl, has nothing to do with jealousy. It's not that she's saying, oh, you're admiring somebody and not admiring me. It was that she's saying that our image together, our value together might have diminished because of this. And then you approach it very differently. But you would have never got to that stage if you had just focused on the judgment and the criticism.
No, beautiful. That is a very, very good way of thinking about it. That for I love the part that what is the proof? I mean,
What's the proof?
what's the proof? How can you mull about something that you do not know the origin or the source of, and then you pass on a judgment? I mean, that's brilliant, brilliant,
Yeah,
brilliant.
like Ashdin, he has long hair. He must be like this. Arey, why was long hair equal to this?
Yeah, yeah.
So it's very interesting to see that. It's so funny now when I go into corporate workshops, right, where everybody is in a tie, and especially like in hotels like this at Four Seasons when I'm doing a workshop, people expect you to look in a particular way, and suddenly there's one man with a ponytail and a beard coming giving a talk. It's a very different feeling. I can see the judgment, and then once you start talking, the proof suddenly disappears for what they had thought about, and then they have a new image of you.
Beautiful. I mean, brilliant, brilliant thing, something that will stick in my mind. As the next thing, again, we'll come to the next habit. Oh, this is a tough one. You tell me, how can happiness be a habit? I mean, I always believed, and I still believe up to a certain extent, and that is why I'm so divided, that happiness is something that is dependent on my more or less, I'm not saying completely, more or less dependent on my external triggers and situations and circumstances. And I also do understand that if you are in a constant state of happiness, that is also not correct. After reading, let's say, the philosophy of Siddharth Gautam, after sometimes reading about the Krishna, what he is trying to say in the Gita, I mean, the Buddha's entire philosophy is centered around that this world is a bloody dukkham. ये तो मानना ही पड़ेगा तुमको, ये दुख है और तुमको तो इससे बाहर निकलना पड़ेगा. Now he did not say that the way to come out of this sadness is happiness. He said that the way to come out of this sadness is detachment. That's the same somewhat what Krishna is trying to say, or what he was trying to say, कि Arjun, you have to find the middle path. That is a yogi who does not get happy when somebody praises her and never gets sad when somebody praises him. You have to find some level of equanimity. So, A, how can happiness be a habit? And if it is a habit, how can I cultivate it? And why should I even bother to cultivate it?
Yeah, start with why should you bother? Okay, I think that's the cutest question. Why should you bother to cultivate happiness? Because what other choice do you have? Living a life of misery is not necessarily a good choice in the scheme of things.
Yeah.
If you can figure out how to be happier most of the time, that's a good thing. Now, coming back to your question about the Buddha said that life is suffering. Detachment is one way of letting go of the suffering. But the key part he said is that first accept that there is suffering. That we miss out.
Yeah.
He first said accept that there is suffering. As soon as you accept that there is suffering, the suffering doesn't hold any grip on you. What is stress? Stress is nothing but wishing that you were in a different reality. It's so beautiful. Every time you have stress, it means that you wish you were in a different place. As soon as you accept that you're in this situation, then the stress goes away. Now you can figure out what to do with it. So, when you think about happiness, the way that I look at happiness is different. I see happiness as your sea level. It is your normal. Our normal should be sea level of happiness. Sometimes there are external situations that pull us down. Death of a loved one, getting fired from your job, not performing well in a particular exam, jo bhi hai. It comes down, not getting what you want. It pulls us down. As long as we realize how to come back and float on the surface, we're good. The problem is that we're all drowning, which is where the suffering comes. But that also means that if the happiness is our base level, if it is sasi level, there are levels above happiness. There is joy, there is bliss, there is ecstasy. All of these are levels above happiness. And that is what we have to realize. That happiness is base. You can go up to bliss and you can dance as if nobody is looking at you. And why does that feel so amazing? You can go into a state of ecstasy. Why does that feel so amazing? And know that you can come back down to the state of happiness. So, what you realize is that happiness can be a constant. Too much of something is bad, too little of something is bad, which is what you were talking about, the middle path. So, don't stay too much in ecstasy because then you won't realize what's happening in life. We normally think ecstasy is happiness, right? Don't stay too much down underwater because then you'll be drowning. That's not good either. There's a beautiful one that said that, have you noticed, if I ask you when was the last time you were happy, or you ask a child, you ask somebody when was the last time they were happy, very often it was, I feel extreme happiness when I buy something new, right? Why do you feel happy when you buy something? It's because for that short period of time, you don't have a desire. You were desiring, you got it. And for that short period of time, that desire, that feeling of desires went away. And that's why you felt that piece of happiness. So imagine if you could slowly, and what Buddha was saying when he's talking about detachment is having lesser and lesser and lesser desires so that the quantity of happiness comes up and up and up. If you notice the Buddha's face, there is calm and there is a smile. There is not anger or suffering on his face, right? The detachment is what brought him that sense of that little peaceful smile on his face.
Yeah, he looks
That
satisfied.
he looks satisfied. Satisfaction can be another way of thinking about happiness, right? When everything has been fulfilled, when the desires no longer exist. And I think that is the way for us to start thinking about it. So start looking at your life and saying that why is it so filled with desires? I want, if only, if only, if only. Only when that happens, I will be happy. Only when that happens, I will be happy. Which means that you are externalizing your happiness. You're outsourcing your happiness to somebody else. And we all know when we outsource to somebody else, what happens? We get frustrated. They don't end up doing the things that we want them to do. Frustration builds. So let us be in control of our happiness. Let's figure out what are the things that we can let go of from our life so there is peace and calm.
So basically, the more expectations we also have from others, expectations that they might make us feel complete, that they might give us something that we want, that is also one of the root cause of us not feeling content and happy. Because, as you rightly said, I'm outsourcing my happiness. I'm outsourcing my wants and needs to somebody else who also is a vulnerable human being like I am. So if I still want to outsource my happiness or my wants to somebody, I might outsource it to somebody who is at a higher level. Let's say God. That's why I'm thinking that when people go into the bhakti, when people go into the reverence of these people, they know the entity to whom they are even trying to outsource is somebody who's more static, somebody who's more reliable, and somebody who's constant and who's not going to, have
Do
mood
you with
swings.
everything? Correct. And you realize that you can rely on yourself.
Yeah.
See, what has happened over the years is we've been taught not to rely on ourselves, to rely on devices, to rely on other people, to rely on so many things. As soon as you realize that you can rely on yourself for your own emotional well-being. Raghav, you used a very important word. You used the word triggered. How can I be happy when I'm constantly being triggered by things? Every time somebody uses the word trigger, I look at them and I say, Are dhakkan, why was the gun loaded in the first place? Bullet kisne rakha? If you take an empty gun and you keep pressing the trigger, nothing happens. It's only when there's a bullet in the gun and you press the gun shoots. So you have to figure out why did you put a bullet in that gun in the first place? Now you might say it wasn't me that did it. It was the bully in school who put that bullet in my gun. It was my abusive father who put that bullet in my gun. It was my angry boss that put the bullet in your gun. No. They did not. You put the bullet. And if you realize that you put the bullet, you can take it out as well. So the question is that nothing should trigger you. Why should it trigger you? If you've done the work to remove these bullets, and who onus of that work relies on us. So that is what we have to think about.
Even if I am able to cultivate a habit of happiness, does that mean that if I am not always happy, that will also trigger me कि अरे यार मैं अभी खुश क्यों नहीं हूं? So do we always need to be in a state of happiness? When are we allowed to even accept the fact कि हाँ यार मैं अभी खुश नहीं हूं?
So there's a philosophical answer to this. That's saying that there is happiness and sadness also. So, for example, when you are when you get your scuba license, you go underwater to look at all the fish and look at the coral, etc. Remember, I told you happiness is sea level. So sometimes when you're dragged underwater, go there looking, observing, saying, Acha, I was capable of this emotion also. I was capable of this kind of fear also. Wow, what a beauty in this. And as soon as you accept it again, what happens? It doesn't hold any grip on you. So you come back up. And there are obviously times that things will happen. Not everything will work out the way you want. I remember a couple of years ago, I was giving a talk to 750 people in the audience. Okay. And it was a very strange talk. There were seats for 750 people, but there was also a marketplace that had been set up. So the seats were empty, people were in the marketplace doing things, and I was sitting and giving my talk. And it was such a strange thing because there was no way that I could get everyone's attention. And I was basically set up for failure. But I came out feeling like I had failed miserably. It was the worst feeling that I could think of. My talks are normally a blast, fantastic. I get so many compliments. I compliment myself, everything. This time I felt sick to my stomach. I wanted to get off stage and throw up. I was feeling so upset or dissatisfied or angry or whatever it was. That emotion at that time, or the emotion of a failure more than anything else. I'd been flown out for this, people had paid money for this, and still like this happened. So then what I did was, I think the rest of the day was just spent with me processing this. They took me out for lunch and I was still angry. Like, why are they spending time with me? I just need to be. Then at the airport, I sat down, took up my book, and I journaled. And I wrote down, why am I feeling like this? What happened here? What are the learnings that I could create? And then I was like, my God, because I can feel like this, I know how high I feel when something goes well. If we don't know the depths that we can go to, we don't know the heights we can go to either. So, because of that feeling of failure, I realized how good my successes are. And I wrote these things down and I made decisions saying that I will not present if this kind of a situation is there in the future. I will always ask for what is the location like, send me pictures. Does this rely with the way? Or then I will have to change the way that I talk in this particular situation. So I figured out what was missing and what change I'm going to make after that. So that is the way to start thinking about it. We sulk and we say, "Arey, life sucks. This is the way life is." The point is, if you beat yourself up about it, what is the point? So let us learn from this so that in the future we can come back or we can do something better.
And that's a beautiful thing to say, something which even I am struggling to, not sulk about. It's very easy. It's very easy to go into that loop. Ashdin, the next thing, again, something which is going to trigger a lot of people because it is a subject like that. Why do you say in your book that anger is useless? How can we then develop the habit of watching over our anger? This is something that I feel it's a lifelong study. It's a subject that if you decide you want to work upon it, then you can work upon it and it will take you a lifetime to cultivate. And the big caveat or the big condition is that if you decide that, yes, I have an anger problem. So tell me, why is anger useless?
So, what is the purpose of anger? Anger actually is a very, very useful tool if you were staying in the jungle. When a tiger comes to attack your baby, you better be angry so that you can fight it. But the problem is, right now, we're not staying in the jungle where there are so many life threatening things that are coming to us. But our reaction to everything is still life threatening. So when you are getting angry, you're basically saying to yourself that my life is in danger. Now, when was the last time you were angry about something? Either something that your mother said or something that somebody in your house did. When was that life threatening to you? Why did it become life threatening? So, what you nearly soon realize is that in our currently, and since we're talking philosophically as well in previous questions, I'll answer it in a slightly more philosophical way than in the book, and then we'll come back to the way that I've answered in the book. What happens is that in the forest, the life that is in danger is a real life. In that today's world, the life that is in danger is your ego. And we equate our ego almost with the same aspect in which that we equate the real life. So what are the things that make us angry when somebody disrespects us? When somebody cuts us off in traffic? It is our ego that felt that my life is in danger. I am no longer respected, which is what the ego wants. I am no longer in this. So you suddenly realize that your ego is the one that is driving this anger boat. It's not anything else. So you say that, okay, fine. Then I realized I need to detach myself from this way of thinking, which is the ego way of thinking. So that is the more philosophical way of understanding anger. But what I've written in the book, I think, is about conducting what I call postmortems on your anger. So say you had a flare up. Now say your anger is like a volcano, right? It builds up, builds up, builds up, builds up, and jab fatta hai, there's no way of closing it at that point of time. So you just observe and you look at it and say, wow, what a beautiful thing. Even in your partner, if they're angry and they're exploding, you take pictures because there's nothing you can do when they are in the middle of that explosion. But after the explosion, you do a postmortem. You know, postmortem is what we do when somebody dies. What caused this to happen? What could I have done instead of this? So you ask those questions to yourself. What caused me to actually explode? Where was this danger that I was feeling to my sense of self-worth or anything else? What can I do next time? In fact, when I work with lots of CEOs who get upset and angry very quickly and, have that Hadoos reputation or the reputation of somebody who is hard-headed, I tell them that anytime somebody, you know, triggers you to explode, excuse yourself, go to the washroom, breathe, process, and come back. And you'll realize in just that taking that little space between the action and the reaction, you have managed to diffuse the situation and come back without that anger flying off the handle. And life is far more better lived without anger. Why? Because most of our regret are things that we said in a state of anger that we didn't really mean.
So basically, Ashton, what you're saying that anger was something that was necessarily for the human system to survive when it was in the prehistoric times, wherein the only way for the family to sustain itself was to go hunting. We were still not that agricultural society wherein we were able to grow our food and we lived in a societies. We were
But
hunter
your actual
gatherers.
life was in danger. See, Raghav, when was the last time your life was in danger? Almost never.
Never. Yeah.
Correct, no? But I'm saying back in the day, even when you were agricultural societies, you would find a snake in your house, you would find a leopard coming into your rice fields. So your life was still in danger. But right now, our life, as we think, see, it is not in danger. So hence the ego comes into
So there are two verticals. Even in today's time, if I see that somebody is trying to threaten me, or somebody is trying to hit me, or somebody has already landed a punch, that is when my anger is absolutely justifies to rebuke and rebuttal and answer back, right? That is not the time when I will think and say कि आपने यहाँ चाटा मार दिया, अब दूसरे भी गाल पे चाटा मार के अपनी भड़ास निकाल दो, मैं कुछ नहीं करूंगा. That is one angle. When you know that you are in a physical threat, that somebody is trying to threaten you, that somebody is trying to take or has some beef with you. So that is when I feel, and correct me if I'm wrong, that the anger is justified when there is a physical threat. Second, if let's say I'm in argument with my better half, or if I'm in an argument with my girlfriend, or if I'm in an argument with my mother, for example, two things can happen, which has happened to me. A, the other party says something knowingly or unknowingly, and it triggers you, and you revert back in the same emotion, you revert back in the same way, and matters escalate. Once that is done, what I have done is I used to go somewhere, maybe light up a cigarette, think about it for 5, 10 minutes to calm down, and then I used to go and apologize. That is one. I have also discovered that there is a second way, which is a very hard way to come to, but if we can do that, that is powerful. Is that when somebody says something to you, you know anger is rising, but you do not revert back. You do not say, and you let the storm pass.
Very beautifully said. So, and with a few tweaks. So, if someone's coming to steal your wallet or is trying to pickpocket you, please get angry with the person. Like, why do you? So, obviously, when someone's abusing you, obviously, you realize what you're fighting. The beauty of turn the other cheek when it came to, for example, Gandhi and when it came to our independence was what a concept that I call become unfightable. Okay. This is something that I teach my clients who are in abusive relationships. When you're constantly being triggered to get into a fight with somebody because they enjoy fighting, you don't get entertain them by getting into the fight. So what Gandhi did was he said that I'm not going to get guns to fight you because I know you will get bigger guns to fight me. And then I have to get more guns. And then there's an arms race that will happen. I'm just becoming unfightable. Jo karna hai kar lo, I'm doing my thing. Jo karna hai kar lo, I'm doing my thing. I'm not fightable. It's like, for example, when you are, uh, imagine if there is a cloud in front of you and you punch it. What's going to happen? Nothing. The hand's just going to go through, right? But at the same time, when there's a whole ice block and you punch it, what's going to happen? You're going to hurt yourself. One is trying to get harder than the other constantly. Then you need something even stronger to break it. What we have to do is when we are in a fight, we have to learn how to become unfightable. That means, whatever you're saying, whatever you're doing does not harm me. I'll just move around. So when your mother or your girlfriend is saying something, you have to figure out firstly, why is it hurting you? Why is it coming from a response point of view? Why do you need to respond? And there's something that I learned very beautifully online. Not every comment that somebody gives needs a response. मतलब कितने idiots are there that comment all sorts of things, right? You come on any popular person's podcast or whatever, and you'll find all these people passing your hate comments on ye kya hai. But every comment needs to be lied to. So why get into a war that you know you cannot win? Why get into a war that you know is actually just going to disturb your peace of mind and nothing else? So that is the way to start thinking about it. Use the anger or use the violence or whatever you want to call it when you know that it's going to lead to a better outcome. When you know it's not going to lead to a better outcome, don't fight, don't get into it. And there's never a time when it's going to lead to a better outcome with your spouse or with your mother or with anybody. Love is a far better outcome.
So if I also operate in a way that I understand the concept that my peace of mind is more important than anything, if that also seeps in into my mind and body, my anger automatically will fall down because I know what I need to prioritize. As in the next thing, and you have mentioned it in your book, that it is something which has personally impacted you. And you were like, this, take this habit as the most important habit from this entire book. And that is gratitude. In today's day and age, there has again been a surge of the word gratitude. A lot of people, a lot of therapists are talking about gratitude. So before we go into the habit of gratitude, I want to understand in a very simple term that my mother and father can also understand what is gratitude.
Gratitude is the feeling when someone has done something for you without expecting anything in return. Very simply, the feeling that you get when someone has done something for you, made your life better in some tiny way also, without expecting anything in return.
Isn't
So,
that
for example,
kindness?
if imagine if I pay you for something, then
Hmm.
it's not gratitude, it's in barter, it's an exchange. But that little bit, so kindness can be one aspect of gratitude. I remember my Hindi teacher showed me so much kindness when I was in school. So I'm very grateful for her. Is a form of gratitude. But when you go and buy Nimbu and he gives you extra dhania, your sabzi wala, That is also gratitude. Arey, I'm so happy that he gave me this little dhania. It can be small thing. The dhania doesn't cost anything. It costs what, 2 rupees, 3 rupees, nothing. But the fact that he's given you something, that also feels nice. The problem is that we think that we are, what is the word? We take everything that we have for granted, or we feel entitled to everything. Gratitude in today's day and age is a great way of breaking that systemic entitlement that we feel and say that we don't really, meaning that person doesn't owe us anything to to do that for us. They've done it out of their own kindness or their own will or their own happiness or their own love or their own whatever. That is gratitude. The problem is that gratitude is used so much in today's society, but nobody teaches us how to use it. So the idea of this chapter was to teach people how to use gratitude. And there are two ways in which I like to use gratitude. I think only one has been talked about in the book, but I'll talk about both in your on your podcast. So what can you be grateful for? You can be grateful to a person, you can be grateful to a thing, or you can be grateful to a situation. So I'm grateful for you doing this podcast with me. I'm grateful for my laptop to be able to do this podcast with you. I'm grateful for the situation that Westland and y'all spoke so that we can do this. So there are so many different things in which I can think about gratitude. What I want us to do is I want us to start using gratitude. Every morning, sit down and write down 3 things that you're grateful for. How do you write down? You write the full sentence. I am grateful for XYZ. The caveat here is that you cannot repurpose or reuse anything that you've been grateful for the next 30 days. So at the end of 30 days, you have to have 90 things that you're grateful for. Now, most people who hear this say, I can't even think of 20 right now. Where will I think of 90? And that's when you realize that there are so many things that have happened to you in the past that you can bring back and remember that you'd taken it for granted back then, or you had forgotten how good life can be. There's another way of using gratitude, which is like a medicine almost. There are times when you feel so low, when you're at rock bottom, you don't know what to do. You feel like life is not worth living. At that point of time, write down 100 things that you're grateful for. Force yourself. And it can be as stupid as I'm grateful to this pen. Start with that. I'm grateful to this pen. I'm grateful to this paper. I'm grateful for to this sun. I'm grateful for this roof above my head. And you'll realize that by number 64, you start feeling much better. By the time you reach 100, you're like, why was I even in that state? My God, I'm filled with so many blessings. So you can use gratitude in multiple ways. Another way that I love using gratitude is before getting on stage for my talks, I use it. I remember one time I was giving a talk to the Rotary Club of Bombay, the big one, which is basically you look at the audience and you realize that 95% of Bombay's turnover is sitting in front of you. So you realize just who are you talking to? And I was back then, I think, in my 30s, your early 30s. I was like, why have they come to listen to a little fusky 30-year-old talk about habits? So I went to the toilet and I stood and I started doing my gratitude. I'm so grateful for this opportunity. I'm grateful for these people coming to listen to me. I'm grateful that I have a message to share. And by the time I came on stage, there was no fear anymore because there's something beautiful that happens that our mind cannot hold gratitude and fear at the same time. It can hold either one of these two emotions. So the fear of talking to everyone went away and only gratitude was left. And it wasn't me versus the audience anymore. It was us together. So that is the beauty of gratitude. And there are so many little things like this that we can learn.
So you are saying gratitude and fear cannot remain simultaneously in your head. So if you exercise the power of gratitude, and when you realize what you're grateful for, it replaces the fear. But Ashdin, then tell me, is gratitude also like motivation, a matchstick that fizzles out in seconds and something that you have to do it again and again and again? And how long would I have to do this practice of gratitude? Let's say I'm in a big rut. Let's say I recently got divorced and everything got taken away from me. And that incident has taken away my entire story, my entire identity. If somebody is going through that dark of a phase, wherein when for what you lived for has been completely taken away for you, your identity has gotten stripped away from you, how does gratitude, why would it even, okay, let's say if it comes into the picture, will it just act as a motivation that I know I need to do this thing daily, and then what's the guarantee that one day it will be able to replace that loss of identity into my mind? Because people can go through n number of worst case scenarios. So is gratitude something that can also help you in the worst case scenarios as well?
It's only meant for the worst case scenarios primarily. So my ex-wife, who was and exactly everything that you mentioned, the only time now I remember her is in my gratitude journal, saying thank you for putting me through all that tension, trauma, etc., because it has made me the person that I am now. I would not be doing habit coaching or any of this if it wasn't for that person putting me through that trauma. So she is part of my gratitude journal at least once or twice a month. There's enough other stuff that is I'm grateful for, so she doesn't get put so many times. But at least twice a month she comes inside. And that's the only time I think about her. When you when people say, how can you be grateful when there are people who have just had a two-week old baby that is dying? How can you have great gratitude at that point of time? The gratitude at that point of time is, I am so grateful that I got at least those 2 weeks to spend with this person. There is always something to be grateful for if you learn and create the muscle of looking at things from this lens of gratitude.
Beautiful. Absolutely beautiful. And I also agree with you that gratitude is something which is life transforming and a very great chapter. And thank you for writing that, Ashton. Okay, Ashton, now we come to the community question. So, as I was telling you, we have a community of readers, and when they got to know that we are doing an episode with you, we had a couple of questions that was sent our way. So, I have picked up one question by one of our community members, Chinmay Sharma. He is, as I was telling you, a fitness enthusiast, and he's an Ironman. He has done 3 times Ironman, and he's an Ironman coach. He coaches people.
Amazing.
So, this is his question for you.
This is Chinmay, and here's my question for you. We all know that building habits are a game changer. Discipline helps in building the long lasting habits. But before that, what are the first 2 base steps that we must take before building the discipline? Also, can we use technology for our advantage to make it better, or technology creates a hindrance in the adaptation steps? Thank you.
So, you know where the word discipline comes from?
Disciple
Correct.
disciple
So,
who's wanting to learn, I guess.
so a disciple of something. So, whenever you want to be disciplined in something, you have to become a disciple of that thing. That means you have to give your heart and soul into it. Very often, we don't give the heart and soul, which is why we are not disciplined. We don't see it with that lens of a disciple. So, that's one. In order to create a habit, there are a few things that you have to keep in mind. The first one is create your intention. Okay, all of these steps that he's asking are covered in the first book, Change Your Habits, Change Your Life. Intention is you keep asking yourself, why is this important for me? Why is this important for me? Why is this important for me? Till you come down to that one nugget where you immediately connect that thing, that habit that you're doing, with a very personal need in you. So I'll give you an example of the same example I use in the book of a client who wanted to learn yoga. Okay, I give this example in all my talks. It's a very cute example. The person comes to me and says, Ashton, I want to learn yoga. So I said, fantastic. Why do you want to learn yoga? And she says, I want to learn yoga so that I can become more flexible. So I said, "Theek hai, chalo. Why do you want to become more flexible? I want to become more flexible so that I can sit on the ground. It's like, okay, this is strange. Why do you want to sit on the ground? I want to sit on the ground so that I can play with my child. Right now, I have a little baby who plays on the ground, and I can't sit on the ground, play with her, and I feel I'm losing out on something. And as soon as you realize that yoga is going to help you become a better parent, spend more time with your child, why are you not going to do that yoga? So you realize how powerful intention is. Most of the time, we have a very surface level intention. It's very airy fairy. We have to deep down and get into something very deep. That's the first step. The second, and then we follow the three golden rules of habit change. The first golden rule of habit change is make it stupidly small. Second is make it extremely easy. And the third is never miss 2 days in a row. So the first is the action that you take. So make it stupidly small. Don't try and run 4K on the first day. Don't try and wake up at 5 in the morning for a run if you wake up at 8 o'clock normally. Make it small. Just put on your shoes. Your running habit is putting on your shoes because, Raghav, you know, the hardest part of going for a run is putting on your shoes and wearing your clothes. Once you're out of the door, then chalta hai. But putting on your shoes is where the highest resistance is. So your running habit is only putting on shoes. Make it make it stupidly small. Extremely easy. Now imagine your mom comes and tells you, Raghav, you cannot put your shoes in the shoe cabinet. Please put it in the box and put it on top of the cupboard. यहाँ पे जगह नहीं है. That means every day you have to get a stool, climb on top of the cupboard, take out your shoes from the dabba, go for a run, come back. Too much jhanjat. It is not extremely easy to do. There are too many friction points. So you're not going to end up doing it. And the third is never miss 2 days in a row. The biggest problem people make when they are joining a gym is that they go 3 times a week. That means there are 2 days that they're not going in a row. So always go either alternate days and continue alternate days, or go, 2 days and then skip 1 day and then go 2 days and skip 1 day. That is a far better way of forming a habit than once in a week, twice in a week, or thrice in a week. So never miss 2 days in a row is the habit or the rule that you follow for consistency. So, Chinmay can use these techniques when he's working with his clients and people that he wants to teach how to run or how to stay consistent. Break it up into small steps. Teach them that all they have to do is put on their shoes. Then everything else is going to flow because they're going to feel very silly putting on their running shoes and sitting at home watching TV.
Absolutely, yeah. Oh, beautiful. What a beautiful answer. What a beautiful answer. So when I read The Psychology of Money, it was a very profound book. And I never thought that I would be equating money with the word psychology, because money was always something very material. And he converted it into psychology. But I feel what is beautiful about the chapter that you have written on the rich mindset, you have equated it with Ma Lakshmi. Now we are entering the realms of energy. Now we are entering the realms of spirituality. So Ashdin, first you explain the meaning, because it was a beautiful meaning, the meaning of word Lakshmi, and what then is the rich mindset. Let's start with Lakshmi Ma first.
Okay. Well, before Lakshmi Ma, I want to add one thing to the psychology of money.
Let's do that.
Because you've asked like 3 questions in this. So let me first break up the psychology of money. We never thought money was mental, but think about it, na? Who said that this little piece of paper actually has this much value? When you add value to something, it's only a mental exercise, because a sheet of paper by itself doesn't have any value. So all of money is only the meaning that we give to it. So money in itself is a psychological mental construct. It has nothing to do with reality.
So it's not just a material thing, it is a psychological thing.
It is only a psychological thing. If you go to a bank and try to rob it, there is no money inside. It is only the notion that this bank has that much money, because the money is actually being gone and used in other places. Na? So your bank account actually does not have 25 lakhs sitting in it right now, because that 25 lakhs has actually gone and been used somewhere else. If you go and ask the bank for 25 lakhs, they won't give it to you from your account. यहाँ वहां से इकट्ठा करके देंगे आपको. So in any case, the way in which we think about money is completely mental and not rooted in reality, which is why this whole concept of, as soon as cryptocurrency came in and we actually even shattered the concept of money further, it was such a big deal on whether whether countries can actually succumb to cryptocurrencies. So anyway, so coming back, so it's completely mental. When it comes to Lakshmi Ma, this was a beautiful thing. I learned from a podcast that I was doing. I think it was with Devdutt Patnaik. I could be wrong, but I think it was Devdutt. So he said, where does the word Lakshmi come from? The word Lakshmi comes from the word Lakshya, to have a goal. Lakshmi Ma is not the Ma of money. Lakshmi Ma is the person giving you your goals or blessing you with your goals. The problem is we don't have goals. So if we don't have goals, how can we have Lakshmi Ma's blessings? And that is why there are so many different forms of Lakshmi Ma. There's Graha Lakshmi, there's Mahalakshmi. There are so many different avatars of Lakshmi Ma because there are so many different goals that human beings have in life. And this idea of the chapter came because I was at a Mahalakshmi Puja, and there was this song that was playing Mere Ghar Aao Lakshmi Ma. And everyone was doing, Mere Ghar Aao Lakshmi Ma, and holding up their kurtas and saying, give me wealth, give me wealth, give me wealth. And that's when I realized they're just thinking paisa, paisa, paisa. तो उनके पास लक्ष्य है क्या?
मतलब पैसा किसके लिए आप बोल रहे हो? But for what? That's what you're
Or
thinking.
at least tell me how much ना? 4 करोड़ चाहिए, 50 करोड़ चाहिए, 5,000 चाहिए. Tell me how much. That goal also we don't have. There was a beautiful story by this one. I think it was Tony Robbins that talks about it. He had just finished the workshop and he was coming back home. He was feeling very happy. There was a beggar on the road that said, "Hi, can you spare me $10?" And he opened his money and gave him $10. He said, "Oh, just like that." He's like, "Yeah, if you'd asked for $100, I would have given you $100, but you only asked for 10." So you realize that your goals are only limited to your way of thinking about them. So when you speak to people, when you speak to mentors, one of the first things that you should ask them is to bless you with expanding your mind, to bless you with actually making you think bigger than you're thinking currently. 1 crore was unthinkable. Then suddenly you realize that why am I asking 1 crore when I could be asking for 500 crores? One of my favorite things to do is whenever I tell people to do an exercise where they tell me how much money they want in life, I say, "Bas, itna hi." And they thought they were asking for too much. No matter what, they tell me $4 billion, I say, "Bas, itna hi." It means that their brain only has the capacity to deal with $4 billion as a concept. Trillion ka socha hi bhi nahi. So the way in which we understand money is all completely mental. And we realize that most of our mental programming has come from our family. Our parents could only think this much. Why do Ambanis think differently? It's because their concept of thinking about money was different. It is not because they have so much money that they can think like that. It's because the way that they approach it is different. What is the difference between a multinational and a small Indian company or a small domestic company? Is that the numbers that they speak are different. Why is it so difficult for a person running a business to come and work in the government? Government is only talking 7,000 crores as chana papri. And for this person, 25 crores is too big. You suddenly start understanding scales differently. So the point of this Lakshya Lakshmi chapter, I know we went all over the place, is to understand that do you have a clear goal that you can define for your money? And only then, if you have a clear goal, will you achieve it.
So once we are able to, first of all, that concept and definition of Lakshmi, oh my God, beautiful.
So beautiful, no?
Beautiful.
Yeah,
No,
Lakshmi Ma is really beautiful.
it's amazing. It's not about the money, it's about the Lakshya, it's about the goal that she is bestowing you. That, okay, ask me what you want to be your goal, and that will be given to you. And obviously, since we are living in the material realm, achieving anything material does require a transaction of money. So that Lakshya wala part was, oh my God. When I read it, I wrote it in my question that I want him to tell the definition of Lakshmi because it was so beautiful. And just because we're discussing, a lot of people, specifically in North India, they think that Dhanteras is about dhan. Jabki they don't know that Dhanteras is about health. Dhanvantari, who's basically a male deity, a form of Vishnu, is nothing but the giver of health, not the giver of wealth. So I think that is a lot of misconceptions that we have about our own gods and goddesses. So Ashdin, what you're saying, if I have to break it down into practical steps, how to cultivate a mindset of richness of money You need to have a goal. Now, that goal could be anything, that I want to get into Oxford, that I want to get into Cambridge, that I want to build a multinational company, that I just want to have a luxurious life, that I want to BMW. Once you have a goal, are you suggesting that then our body, then our mind starts thinking ways to achieve that goal, and then how much I need to achieve that goal? So I want to understand how defining a goal reverse engineers into us accumulating wealth. What goes into the mind? How is it able to function in a way once it knows what it wants to do?
The beautiful thing is that we think of our brain or our mind as something that runs the body, or something that is just a problem for most people. People say that I cannot spend time by myself because my mind will go for a toss. I will overthink. What we don't understand is that our mind is a creation device. Anything that you see was first created in somebody's mind. Great Wall of China was first created in somebody's mind before they could build it. Anything that you see around you, this cup first had to be visualized by somebody in their mind before they could create it. And we don't realize this. So the clarity with which you can think and the clarity with which you can create in your mind is the first step for creating anything that you want in life. Why do I say clarity? Because so many times I get people who say that I want to live on the beach. Okay, fantastic. You can live in a mansion that has 25 bedrooms on the beach, or you can be living under a bridge because you don't have a home on the beach. Right? You're still living on the beach. You have to have clarity. You should be able to completely close your eyes and visualize this life, or visualize either the material part or the non-material parts of the things that you want to be creating. So it is not about just a goal. Goal is, of course, because you need to know where you're heading in life, otherwise you'll never go anywhere. But you need the clarity of the goal. Spend a lot of time getting clarity on the things, and you'll realize that those goals become real. Because what happens is, and we do this a lot when we work with people on their relationships. So a large part of what I'm doing now is working with people on finding partners consciously, not subconsciously. And whenever they actually define their partners, they get a partner within 2 weeks. What they didn't realize was that partner was there in front of them all this while, maybe on a train station or maybe in a restaurant, etc. But because they had not defined that person, they had not seen that person. So as soon as you define it, your mind starts picking up aspects and says, remember you wanted this. Remember you wanted this. It's like for example, when you give example for BMW. Concept BMW 3 Series, M, etc. Lal color. Your brain is only going to look for this car now. It will ignore all the Innovas on the road. It'll only look for that red BMW. That is the beauty of the goal setting with clarity. That is how to think about it.
So when you have clarity, you also have the clarity of achieving it. You also have the clarity of how then I want to be there and what is required, how much money is required for me to achieve that goal.
It's not necessarily how much money is required. It is what are the steps that are required, or it is what is the process that is required, or what are the things that need to come together for me to get it.
And money could be a step in that process.
It might that BMW might be a gift also, no?
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, you go to Dubai and you scratch a lottery card and you might win a BMW. But if you don't buy the lottery card, you won't win the BMW.
Yeah, absolutely. Now we'll come to the next habit, which again I found very relatable and something that has been talked around a lot these days. Is being always in a comfortable state a bad habit? You talk about being in a comfortable state. You talk about being comfortable. And there was a book that I have read, Ashdin, sometimes back. It was called The Comfort Crisis, in which that individual talks about his entire thesis, his entire philosophy was centered about that what is troubling to him is the fact that the way he's seeing technology pushing humanity, technology is pushing humanity towards a level of comfortability wherein everything is getting outsourced and technology is fulfilling that. to an extent that he believes that we as species will become obsolete if we become too comfortable. So that's why this habit, first of all, a beautiful habit to include in a book. So I want to understand, what do you mean by the comfortable state, and why is it a habit that needs working on? Or what's your entire take on the philosophy of the comfort crisis?
In my first book, as well as this book, I talk about comfort. So in the first book, I talk about the comfort zone. Because when I was writing that book, comfort zone was the big thing. Break out of your comfort zone. Every single person was talking about break out of your comfort zone, break out of your comfort zone. Did you suddenly realize that if you're constantly breaking out of your comfort zone, you're going to be living such a fight or flight living anxiety? Comfort zones are there for a reason. It's supposed to make you feel at ease. The problem is that if you only stay in your comfort zone, you never grow. So, how do we grow? We don't break our comfort zone, we stretch our comfort zone. And the example I gave in my first book was, you go and see a person making a pizza, right? He takes a ball this size and then he slowly starts opening it and opening it and opening, and then he throws it in the air. And slowly, that small ball has now become this wide. That is what our comfort zone needs to be. You have to think like a pizza tosser. If we tossed it too much, it tore, that pizza is useless. So we don't have to break out of our comfort zone, but we have to learn how to stretch it. You are reading 3 books. In order to read 4 books, you have to stretch your comfort zone slightly. You have to probably read a little more than you otherwise read. So that's how you start thinking about comfort zones. In this book, when I'm talking about comfort zones, I was giving the example of this person when I went for a Malcolm class, which is like a gymnastics class, an Indian gymnastics class. And he put us in this very strange position between my head, underneath my feet, and God knows what I was doing. And then he said, now stay there till you're comfortable. Or he said that, are you comfortable? Or this is comfortable. And I was like, how in their right mind can imagine this as being comfortable? But the point is that when you put enough practice and you stretch your comfort zone to the extreme, you realize that almost anything can eventually become comfortable. I'll give you a fun example. I call this become like James Bond. Okay. Now, James Bond you see in movies, any situation you throw him in, he feels comfortable in. He's in a casino with billionaires sipping martinis, he's comfortable. You throw him in a Soviet tank, he knows how to drive that Soviet tank. You put him in a boat, he knows exactly where the switch is and what to do. How is he comfortable everywhere? He's comfortable everywhere because he slowly expands his comfort zone to such a degree that anything that you throw at him, he's comfortable. Imagine if we can become like that. Any situation you throw me in, can I quickly learn to become comfortable in? And I think that is a superpower in itself.
How do you do that? What all things can you do or practice today if I want to be like that, if I want to be like James Bond? Because I think there are multiple factors that culminate into this output, not one thing.
So what was about James Bond? It is training. Can we put ourselves to training? When I started talking to large audiences, I started with 10 people and became 12 people. I still remember the first time I did public speaking on talking about habits. 10 people, 15 people. Now when I'm talking to 1,000 people, it doesn't feel intimidating anymore. In fact, I come out energized because I slowly expanded my comfort zone. What we have to do is we have to realize that we have to slowly start stretching it. We have to first identify where in our life do we feel inadequacies. Do we feel we're out of our comfort zone? And then let's see if we can expand. Some of us feel out of our comfort zone when we're talking to people. So can we practice talking to people? I'm an introvert by nature, but most people will not know that I'm an introvert by nature because of the way I speak. But it is something that I've trained myself in. I trained myself to write a book. I'm not an author. But why do I have 4 bestsellers? Because I trained myself to be able to write. I actually sat down and I looked at all the bestsellers and whatever they gave as advice. What did Stephen King say about writing? What did Terry Pratchett talk about writing? What did all these people say about writing? Can I incorporate that into my life? And that's how you start expanding your comfort zone. Will there be things that I'm completely uncomfortable with? Of course, right now, running, for example, for me is something I'm completely uncomfortable with. But I'm stretching my comfort zone 10% every week. Fantastic, that I can follow.
What's your personal take on technology actually, growing to a level wherein we are absolutely living in the era of the best comfort that we've ever been? Do you think that this can, if it remains unregulated, can backfire? This technological comfort level that we're seeing right now, in terms of getting foods delivered, in terms of the transportation, not just the transportation, but in terms of the ease of discovering new people via dating apps, chatting, interacting, posting, getting everything delivered at your house. What's your personal take? Do you sometimes think that these things are good, but they are really pushing the human beings into becoming kind of non-functional and being too happy about their comfortable
No, it's
lives?
not that. The question is that are human beings still evolving? Because evolution is a very key part of life.
Yes.
Okay, the problem is that evolution takes place when we change and not make the environment change. What human beings done is we figure out how to make the environment change for us. And as a result, humans have stopped evolving.
Can
So
you say
in the
that again? Sorry.
past,
Can you say that again? That's very profound. Please say that again.
so evolution happens when we start changing and not forcing the environment to change. The environment is doing what the environment does, but we have to change to adapt to the environment. And the animals that adapt fastest to that change are the ones that stay, and the ones that don't are the ones that die. For the last centuries, humans have stopped evolving because we have learned to control the environment. It started with the agricultural revolution. Before, when you were a hunter, you were dependent on whether there was a prey there and how you got it. Then we started building tools. Life became easier. We developed fire. We started cooking the food. We got more nutrition from it. Then, when we went into agriculture, and we don't think of agriculture as technology, but it's a big technology step. Just the same way tools were a big technology step. It made life easier in some ways, harder in others. Easier because we didn't have to move around so much. We were sedentary. We had a steady supply of food. What did we have to control? We had to control the weather that was coming in. We were dependent on the rains. Fantastic. Then we learned irrigation. Irrigation took away the need for controlling the weather in terms of the rains. You slowly started seeing that we started taking control of the environment. And as a result, we stopped evolving. We started changing the environment around us. Silly example, but a very relevant one, is when did we start devolving is also, for example, with arranged marriage. With arranged marriage, we don't need to necessarily impress a mate in the way that we had to traditionally do physically or with our strength or etc. We had to do it in other formats on how comfortable we can keep them or with our with any different ways. So we stopped evolving as human beings just with the fact saying that I know that I'm going to get a mate. Earlier on, you wasn't sure that you were going to get a mate and you weren't good enough, you wouldn't. Your genes would die. But now almost everybody is assured that they will get a mate in the way that things are. So you realize that evolution itself has stopped. Now, when it comes to technology, this is just another step. Are we screwed? 100% we're screwed. But are you still going to be resilient? Do you still know how to rewire the electricity? Do you still know how to start a fire if you need to? Do you still know how to spend time in the wilderness? So it was very cute during COVID. I had a bow and arrow that I had bought a long time ago. So I learned archery on my farm because I realized that if all hell breaks loose and technology goes away and everything, I need to learn how to hunt. I need to learn how to do this. Just let me start the process of doing it. I used to joke with my friends saying I'm practicing for the zombie apocalypse because you see in all the zombie movies, everyone's shooting with bows and arrows only. Kuch aur kuch hai hi nahi. So I was joking about it, but point is, are you creating that level of resilience within you? I was on a podcast and this person was talking about how the restaurant he was ordering from is below him. There's a Swiggy driver that had to come from 1 kilometer away all the way to his building to pick up the order from below him to bring it up to his room. And you realize just how much of our resilience we've outsourced to people. It's not that the resilience has gone away, we outsource that resilience. We have become weaker. That is what we have to choose.
Ashden, this brings me to the last question. The last
Excellent.
question, which is, I think, very important, something again which I have struggled with. what is self-worth and why I have struggled with my self-worth in the past 1 year. And I really want to understand what is self-worth. Why is it important for any individual to cultivate the habit of having a self-worth? And if we are able to do that, what change will I see in myself? It's the most difficult thing, Ashdin, that I had to deal with. When certain situations come, this is the first thing that gets axed off. It's the first goddamn thing that gets cut off. So what is self-worth?
Self-worth. So I had this idea of self-worth when I was sitting on my farm, and I was saying, Acha, my farm is 8 acres. That means I know it is 8 acres only because we've drawn a boundary line around it. If there was no boundary line around it, I did not know if it was worth 8 acres or 4 acres or 3 acres. Anybody could have come and sat somewhere and said, Ye mera hai. But because there is a boundary and we've created boundaries, have we understood iska basic worth, which is 8 acres. The first thing that goes in our life is our boundaries. When we have people stepping on our boundaries, trespassing our boundaries, not having clear boundaries, we don't have clear self-worth. That is the first one. Now, if you have clear boundaries and you know, chalo, I am 8 acres. 8 acres in a desert is very different from 8 acres on a fertile land. 8 acres on a desert is worthless. 8 acres on a fertile land has worth because you can cultivate crops. But then what do you do with those 8 acres? You invest in those 8 acres. And you can see, for example, what Dubai has done. They've converted a sandy area into a multi-billion-dollar business because they invested in that. So first is know your boundaries. Second is learn how to invest in yourself. When you don't have self-worth and you observe people without self-worth, these two things are often missing in them. They don't have very clear boundaries. Or if they have very clear boundaries, they think they have clear boundaries. They are harsh. So for example, anger is a way of you thinking that you have a boundary, but actually you've broken that boundary because you've allowed somebody to trespass and create a trauma inside you.
And you're angry because of that.
I'm angry because of that. Na? So in any case, the boundary hai hi nahi. They've easily broken into you. So you've now created a boundary. And the second is that you're not investing in yourself to grow your own self-worth. For example, you starting this podcast is a great way of investing in yourself. Reading the books is a great way of investing in yourself. So you started putting in that effort. Maybe that wasn't there earlier. I don't know. But now that you've started doing this, you're noticing that your self-worth is getting increase. So it incorporates these two things, knowing where your boundaries are very clearly. If you want, you can increase your boundaries and then increase your self-worth. So 8 acres se 10 acre banate hain. Or you can increase the value of the soil by investing in it.
So we'll resume. So I understand that setting boundaries is a very essential part of creating your self-worth. Ashdin, let's do this very small exercise. Let's take an example. It can be an imaginary example or it can be an example that you've heard of before. Can we take a situation in which you first narrate that this is how, if the person would have had some boundaries, this would not have happened, and then how can a person create a boundary? So let's take a real-time example, any kind of example that you think people can understand ki, acha, this is how you create boundaries.
Let's take something from your life now. What has recently happened where you felt boundaries violated?
So I realized that I was always in the zone wherein I was like, okay, if I do one more thing, this will not happen. If I do one more thing, this will not happen. If I do one more thing, this will not happen. And I realized I kept on doing it to escape certain level of violence, to escape certain level of toxicity, to escape certain level of emotional drama. So I could escape that emotional drama. I kept on giving into the demands of the other party, eventually reaching up to the level wherein I was not able to identify myself. I used to hate who I became. But then I also used to think of the times when I was able to set my boundaries on certain things and they were not honored. And because of that, I was like, कि ठीक है मैं अब अच्छा ये चाहिए चलो ये कर देता हूँ शायद अब ठीक हो जाए. Because in the past the boundaries were not at all honored. And knowing that the boundaries were not honored, I didn't do anything about it. So that's
So
exactly
you
what happened with
realize that
me.
you realize that value didn't exist. There was no boundaries. Somebody was just coming and sitting in your property.
So you are saying I had the boundaries, but that was not reciprocated, is what you're saying.
No, 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 no. I'm saying that even if you had a boundary, it was only in your head. It wasn't serious enough for the other person to respect it. You put a boundary, you can draw one line in the sand, right? Yeah, I can walk over that. Chalo. After that, you can put some plants. I can walk over the plants. And you put barbed wire fence. Okay, I can kind of walk through barbed wire fence. Then you electrify the fence. Then you put razor beams. You basically do what the things you can do to protect the boundaries as much as you can. It escalates sometimes, but sometimes that escalation is needed. Where are you going to willing to go up to and no more is something that you have to take as a personal call. I'm willing to deal with this much, but not beyond this. And there will always be repercussions beyond this. And you need to be clear that there'll be repercussions, good or bad. Sometimes you have to fight, like we've discussed it earlier. Sometimes there have to be repercussions. But you have to decide that there will be repercussions. Up till this point, I'm willing to take. Beyond this point, I'm not. Very often, our up till the point I'm going to take becomes too big and everything we've given away happens. So we realize that much earlier. So you'll notice people with extreme amount of high self-worth, almost what we call narcissistic people, have zero tolerance for boundaries. No, it is only my way. It's not open for negotiation.
Is having high self-worth equivalent to being a high value individual?
You answered the question, na? Self-worth and value are same together. We don't respect people who don't respect themselves, no?
Yeah.
So it is right there. So the value that you give your time, the value that you give your energy, the value that you give is critical. How much do you value?
So
I
that's
think
why.
I think it's a beautiful thing for us to also think about and value and create our own boundaries. Everyone listening to this, create your boundaries and see how you can increase your self-worth by investing in yourself. Listening to podcasts like this is a great way. What else can you do?
Uh,
And I take action on it.
yeah, and I think having a purpose, because this is also something that I've heard a lot, that when you have a real purpose, you are then able to completely know what you need to do, and then you know that if there is something that is de-alienating me from that part of the purpose, I am not going to tolerate. So is having a purpose, Ashdin, also something that really helps cultivate self-worth in an individual?
Absolutely. And purpose comes in different ways. It can come in your business, it can come with having a child, it can come with having a pet, it can have it even coming a plant. Which is why plants, pets, children become such an important part of people's lives because it gives them a sense of purpose.
Yeah. No, absolutely. As I said, this is something that I struggle with, because when you have such, when you have divorces, when you have marriages ending after 7 years or 8 years or 10 years or 20 years, you really start doubting, everything that you used to believe in. You really start doubting that, you know, I was worthless, and that is why this thing had to end.
Only because you associated your worth with that situation that you were in. So it's important for you to think about what your worth is. And it comes back to the first question you asked about why do people spend so much time on their jobs?
Yeah.
So it is where they see their worth. So that is how you actually tie it in. I think that's a beautiful way of coming back to the beginning and ending our podcast.
Yeah. Uh, Ashdin, again, thank you for writing this book. I again want readers to look at it. There are so many habits that we did not discuss. They are a gem of a habit. This is a gem of a book, and I want to tell people that please grab your hand on this book and all the other books written by Ashdin. Ashdin, I hope you enjoyed the. Acha, any last word? Any last word? Any one takeaway or anything that you would like to say as a message to all the readers who are listening to you, who are familiar with your work, and who want to, understand and read your work?
So I want everyone to understand that the life of their dreams, that awesome life that they think about, only exists on the other side of the habits that they choose to start today. If they don't make a change, nothing is going to change. So choose a habit and start it today, and you'll see your life transforming.
Beautiful. What a beautiful message. And thank you so much, Ashdin, for taking out so much
Thank you so
time.
much, Raghav.